And we welcome you on into another episode of Big Time Sports Podcast Show. It's Mitch Spinell alongside Mitchell Balla here to give you the latest in the sporting world. Mitch is going to be back after another weekend here. We have a lot to talk about. We have some teams advancing, some teams seeing their seasons come to an end, and some teams that are going to be fighting for the top spots here in the next coming weeks.
Yeah, Mitch, some very entertaining high school basketball tournament games in the district rounds and the regional rounds for girls. A special guest appearing on the show today, and some breaking news we're going to touch on later in the show in the NFL, and a big game for our Cleveland Cavaliers. So plenty to talk about here today.
No doubt, no doubt. We start off the show like we usually do with the high school stuff here, where we talk about a lot of stuff going on in the postseason. We'll get to the bowling stuff. We'll get to the wrestling stuff here very soon. We start off in basketball, where we saw a number of teams compete on the boys' side of the district tournaments this past weekend, Mitch. And on Saturday, we saw a number of results come to fruition. We had a couple of teams that were advancing on to the regional finals. Among them, on my side, we have the Hiland Hawks were able to stave off a very close game, and they're able to get that victory to make it to the regional tournament. I believe that was, over top-seeded River. The Hawks were able to get two quick free throws with Sammy Detweiler in the closing seconds and staved off a Pilots rally that was down 42-27 and into the game at 56-54. So that's a very good one there. And then a couple of other teams in that mix. But we also had a couple of other matchups as well. Canton Central Catholic is still in the mix. Tell us about the Crusaders' run to the regionals.
Mitch, they were down early in their district championship game against the top seed in their district, Norwayne. And the Crusaders made a great second half comeback. They cap it off after a very physical and defensive stand by the Crusaders in the second half. And now here we are, Central Catholic back to the Sweet 16. They will have their hands full moving forward. But your first goal, generally more times than not, Mitch, as a team is to win your league, right? And if you're not in your league, it's to improve your record, to get a good seed, and then go to the tournament. Your next goal then is to win your district championship. You can't even look ahead to states until you do that. The Crusaders took care of business, defeating Norwayne in a very, very entertaining game. I mentioned they were down early in the first half. I believe they trailed by double digits at one point in the game. And they come back, they beat Norwayne, and now they will advance to the Sweet 16 in Division III, and they will head to Bowling Green. It's a bit of a hike, but I know Central Catholic parents obviously will go to watch their sons play, but also the Central Catholic community and alumni will show out strong. And we'll see if the Crusaders can keep on dancing here in the month of March and maybe make a way to the state tournament.
No doubt. I mean, we had a number of schools also advancing to the regional semifinals. In my side, we usually go to the Convocation Center in Athens at Ohio University to see our area teams play. So we'll see Hiland advance to the Division IV regional round as the Hawks are set to play at the Convocation Center. They'll play Stewart Federal Hawking on Tuesday, March 7th. At 8 o'clock. So we'll see them fight there. We'll also see in Division III, the Garaway Pirates, who avenged their home loss to the Malvern Hornets from a few weeks ago with a 65-62 Friday night East District Championship win in a packed house in New Philadelphia. The Pirates were very efficient offensively and were able to settle themselves down in the closing stretch compared to what they weren't able to do in Sugar Creek against the Hornets a few weeks ago. The Pirates staved off a Malvern comeback by J. Allen Barrino, the IVC North Player of the Year, missing a game-tying three-point attempt with less than a minute to go, and then Jensen Garber sealed the victory with making one of two free throws, and Malvern just didn't have enough time left. So the Pirates, they are still alive in this mix. They end the Hornets season at 24-2. That was the Hornets' second loss of the season. The other one coming to another team that's still in the mix, Maysville. The Pirates set to take on Columbus Afrocentric in the Region 11 semifinals in Athens this week. That'll be played on Wednesday, March 8th at 6 p.m. So Sugar Creek trying to make it back to the finals, man. I believe 2008 is when the last time the Pirates were able to make it to the Final Four, ended up going to the state championship game. So, yeah, that should be a good one there. And then, of course, a couple of teams that weren't able to get out of this round. I mentioned earlier in the week, I was at Edison to see the matchup between, who was it here? It was blanking on the name here. It was Carrollton losing to East Liverpool on the boys' side. But we had a couple of other teams there as well. On my end, I mentioned Malvern there. Your side, it was a couple of teams. The first one being the Glen Oak Golden Eagles, who ended up losing to the Knights of Akron Archbishop Hoban.
Yeah. And so if you remember correctly, Mitch, early on this season, really the first or second week of the high school basketball season, Glen Oak defeated Hoban here in the Hall of Fame Hardwood Classic on a putback shot from Ja'Cory Lipkins, and they stunned the Hoban Knights 60-59. Here is where the difference kicked in, Mitch. And it just hit me this past weekend after looking through everything and reading some articles. Glen Oak is a very good basketball team, right? They proved that this year. They're very young. They are going to be a force to be reckoned with next year in the Federal League. I would imagine them and Green are at the top of the Federal League coming into next season. But Hoban was missing some key players because their football team was playing for a state championship in the Division II high school playoffs. They had all those bodies back now. There's a reason that Hoban may have gotten off to a sluggish start. And now here they are into the Sweet 16 after they knocked off Glen Oak, and then really, Mitch, just handling Nordonia with no problem. It was close in the first half. It was a 27-25 game at the half. Mitch, they held Nordonia scoreless in the third quarter. They went on a 21-0 run to open the third and ultimately end the third, from a 27-25 lead to a 48-25 lead after three. That was really all she wrote. And it's no shade or offense to Nordonia, but when you can't score in a third quarter, I don't know where your mentality and confidence would really be as a basketball team. And listen, this is the Hoban Knights back-to-back district championships, and they go back to the Sweet 16 last year. They defeated Green, I believe, in the regional semifinals before falling in the regional final. This is a team that returned a lot of players from last year. Mitch, when you have Mr. Ohio in football coming off your bench, who's also a very good basketball player in Lamar Sperling, that is a huge boost for Hoban. And he's a very tough player to guard. So Hoban is deep. They're battle tested and they've been here before. So we'll have to see how Hoban fares. Now, their game isn't going to be easy if we're being honest here, Mitch. They take on St. Ed's, and St. Ed's is a very, very good basketball team. They played in their 23rd straight district championship this past weekend, in which they won. They now advance to the Kent State Regional in Region 2 of Division I high school basketball. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. But Hoban is definitely a team I think that can end up knocking off St. Ed's. It's going to be a very entertaining game. That game on March 7th at 7 p.m. at Kent State University.
No doubt. You mentioned Sperling coming off the bench there, and a couple of other standout names. Will Scott, one of the top scorers for that night squad, at 18 points against the Eagles. Yeah, Jonas Nichols leading the way with 24 points, and Logan Vallis had 5 3-point attempts to make it for 15. And of course, the game that happened on Saturday, obviously might have had a personal touch for you, but I believe it had a personal touch for other people, because Jackson saw their run fall just short to Stowe Monroe Falls. And I mean, there was some news that came out this week. It was a bit touchy to really handle. And yeah, I mean, kind of just take us through the Polar Bears, what they had to go through this week.
Yeah, so I alerted you Thursday of the news once I was made aware. Obviously, it was not public knowledge, and so I obviously can trust you not to post anything out there. It was made public knowledge on Friday afternoon. So Thursday night, Jackson defeated Green in the district semifinals in Division I Northeast 2 district bracket. Jackson did it without their head coach, Tim DeBevick. And if you are listening or watching this right now, there was a post from Big Time Sports. The Jackson athletic director, Jeff Crocker, put out a statement. Head coach Tim DeBevick was away from the team. His daughter is hospitalized, so it was a family matter he was attending to. His daughter, Chelsea, a standout student athlete, a freshman at Ohio State that is on the women's lacrosse team. Some health issues, health scare. Coach DeBevick stepped away, and so obviously the boys on Thursday night coming out to play Green wanted to do it for coach. And the news is out there now, and so obviously still want to extend our thoughts and prayers to Tim DeBevick, his wife, and daughter Chelsea, from both Big Time Sports and as well as the Jackson Township community. And you can see right there, if you're watching, the statement put out by Jackson's athletic director. So he stepped away, Mitch. Obviously, family is always first. It's something they preach on the basketball team, family first. And it was a no-brainer that coach was obviously going to have to go attend to that matter. And had Jackson won, he wouldn't be back. So Jackson defeated Green 53-38 in the district semifinals, and then advanced to take on the number 1 overall seed in the district and the super districts, the Stowe Bulldogs, a team that beat Jackson 58-48 on opening night this year at Jackson High School. Mitch, Jackson grew up a lot, though, since that point. They had a couple different starters in there that really didn't see much action in this game. And Jackson gave Stowe all they could handle. But unfortunately, a couple miscues down the stretch cost the game for the Polar Bears. Jackson led 37-36 with under a minute to go. They had the ball with 20.5 left on the clock looking to inbound. Stowe made them use 2 timeouts. And Jackson then threw the ball away out of bounds off their own player. It led to a Stowe possession, and it ultimately led to a Reese Raymond Smith game-winning layup as he drove on Owen Wilbert, got just past him and underneath him out of the outstretched arm and reach of the 6'7" big man to put it off the glass and in from the right block. Jackson then got the ball to inbound with a running clock, 9 seconds. James Bozart had a good look for a potential game-winning shot from the near side corner from 3. It was blocked by AJ Postello Jr., and that was all she wrote. Stowe survived, Mitch. Stowe got by Jackson 38-37 in what was really a heartbreaking end for Jackson, because they took not only the number 1 team in the district, but the number 3 team in the state to the wire. And Jackson played one of their best games, but unfortunately it came down to the end, and a team that returned their top 7 players from last year found a way to win. And that was ultimately the difference. I'm not going to sit here and look at it and say, if Jackson gets that pass in bounds, that's the reason they lost. There's plenty of other things that happened throughout that game that they could have converted on. And you have to give credit to Stowe, Mitch. Stowe made Jackson pay, and that's what good teams do at this point in the season. And it was a heartbreaking loss. It was an emotional loss because obviously Jackson, for the players' sake, wanted to keep on winning, but they wanted to make Coach Dubevic proud, and that was their big thing. And I do know for a fact they made him proud. I know the community, the school district is very proud. It's never easy to lose your coach for a few games, let alone when it's win or go home time. Acting head coach John Purdue, Mitch, he has been a varsity assistant at Jackson now for 21 years. He did a phenomenal job. There's no playbook. There's no manual to be thrusted into a district semifinal game. Really, I believe I told you the news at 3:30 the day of the district semifinal game. So you're talking about less than 4 hours to prepare. And he did a phenomenal job. The players did a phenomenal job. And then he did a phenomenal job once again on Saturday. Jackson has nothing to be ashamed of. They had a phenomenal season. They won the Federal League title. It is back-to-back seasons and losing in the district championship, Mitch, but you lose the Federal League Player of the Year in Owen Wilbert. You lose a couple seniors, but this team returns 3 starters next year and another sophomore off the bench in Cam Weekly. This team is going to probably have to play a different style of basketball, losing Wilbert, who's 6'7", Caden Edwards off the bench, who's 6'6", a senior, Ashland football signee. But they're going to be good for the next few years when you look at Mitch Finnefrock, Kyle Monterubio, and Cam Weekly. All sophomores. Anthony Fuline is back next year, the starting point guard from this team as a junior. This team is going to be better. They're probably going to have to play a different style. Like I said, it was more inside out this year. We'll see what that entails. But obviously you didn't want to see the season end as a Jackson fan or player or family member. But now attention still turns to the Dubevic family, and we're going to make sure we give them the privacy they deserve. But from all accounts, it seems like Chelsea Dubevic is progressing from what I've gathered, and that's the big thing right now. And Jackson had a great season. That's all there is to it. Mitch, Stowe, this is a team I don't think anybody wants to face. And now they get to face Walsh Jesuit in the regional semifinal, a team they've already beat this year. Early in the season, I believe it was about their 7th game in the season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And Walsh Jesuit was ranked high in the state at that time, and they went there and beat them. This is going to be a very entertaining game. Walsh Jesuit just hung on. They survived a late comeback from the Brush Arcs on Saturday in the Euclid championship game. These are 2 teams that are very, very talented, battle-tested, and once again, know each other. There's not a whole lot that you can pull out, whereas if you play a team you haven't played yet, they might not know everything. This is going to be fun. So on one side in the Division I Region 2 regionals, St. Ed's versus Hoban. That winner will advance to take on the winner of Stowe and Walsh Jesuit on Friday, March 10th at 7 p.m. at Kent State, and the winner of that going to the state Final Four.
It's gonna be an exciting and interesting time for those teams. And we also have on the girls' side here a couple of area schools that will be competing in the upcoming Final Four down in Dayton. First one on my side is the Hiland Hawks. who make it back to the state tournament by beating Portsmouth Notre Dame 53-43 in their Region 15 final in Pickerington. Ashley Mullet led with 23 points, while Evie Mast, a freshman for the Hawks, made 5 out of 5 3-point attempts to help out a Hawks team that has been very, very good down the stretch. They were 8-6 at one point this season, Mitch, and now they're 14 wins in a row. They are 22-6 now. They'll play in their fourth state semifinal in the last 5 seasons, and they'll take on Region 16 champion New Madison Tri-Village this Thursday at 8 p.m. in Dayton's UD Arena. So it's going to be an exciting time for many Berlin residents. But kind of take me through this one here. Canal Fulton Northwest, for the first time in their program's history, winning the regional title in a 51-29 victory over Canfield. So they'll play undefeated Fairland in the Final Four this coming Thursday afternoon.
You mentioned that win over Canfield, Mitch. Canfield led 1-0, and then Northwest did what Northwest has done all year. They played their style of basketball. They scored 11 points straight, and they were hitting shots from inside, outside, and the Northwest Indians, Mitch, go to Dayton for the first time in program history, but they're not just focused on that. They're focused on bringing home a Division II state championship trophy, and they are going to have an opportunity to do that. They will have their hands full. Obviously, you mentioned they play Proctorville Fairland, who is 27-0 Thursday at 1 p.m. at the University of Dayton Arena. But Mitch, Northwest has some amazing seniors. You're talking about a player. One of their post presence is just phenomenal. Another double-double in the regional championship game. This is so exciting for Northwest because they've had high expectations. Last year, their season ended a little earlier than they would have liked, but they returned their core, and here they are. It pays off, right? You get that experience last year, that sour taste in your mouth. They come back with a goal. They've accomplished the first part of that goal, and now we'll see if they can win 2 more games. Thursday, 1 p.m. against an undefeated team, but Mitch, don't count them out. Northwest is so talented and so well coached, not to mention their coach has seen it before with his dad coaching and taking a team to the state Final Four. It's just an all-around feel-good story, but it's only going to feel better if they keep winning. And it's just a remarkable accomplishment. I know we're going to try to get some of the Northwest Lady Indians and their coach on here later in the week, hopefully, if their schedule allows it. Obviously, when you make it to states, the schedule is a little different. Your routine isn't always the same because you have to go down earlier. It's a far drive, whether you're staying the night before or after the game. So we'll see. We're going to try to swing it to make sure these ladies get the recognition they so much deserve.
And that center you mentioned, Lily Bottomley, one of the top players in the area, 6'2". She dominates in the paint and is a very solid scorer for that team. He also had a couple of standout performances as well. She had 16 points and 10 rebounds, as you mentioned, in the game, and then a couple of other ones there as well. I mean, the Indians just had some very solid ones there. Ashley Kudnick, 10 points for the team. Delaney Carmody had 9. A number of players at 8 points as well. So very good performances by those teams. And we should see them in the states here very soon. Now, speaking of states, we also had a bunch of area wrestlers punch their tickets to the state tournament this past week. Starting off the Division II tournament in Steubenville, you had West Holmes finishing as the top overall team with 159 points ahead of schools like Indian Valley and New Lexington. A number of wrestlers making it out as individuals. Carrollton finishing in 4th place. They had Levi Pigeon winning the 126-pound division, while Landon Jenkins, Ben Zinda, Josh Carmen, and Cal Snare finished in the top 6. You had Claymont having Elijah Parrish and Thane Mahaffey getting in there as well, while Wyatt Shaw and Leroy Stiegel for Indian Valley for a couple of other teams. Hunter Albright, Quake Beatty, and Jackson Bircher for the Braves as well. Zeke Williams for New Philadelphia, Edgar Maya Ramos, and Garrett Dillon Ryan for the Quakers as well. And then in Division III, you had Brandon Boggs and Evan Natal for Sandy Valley. New Cumberstown's Henry Booth was in 3rd place. Dominic Melender, Bladen Garland. You also had Ridgewood's Jesse Maple, Tuscarawas Valley's Josh Owens and TJ Wilson, along with Malvern's Tyson Clear, Xavier Watson, and Zach Babiczuk. So, I mean, it's going to be a good crop of wrestlers here for the next coming state tournament, which will be held at the Jerome Schottenstein Center down in Columbus.
And Mitch, there was more state championship matches and competitions going on this weekend. So we'll first start here. Cheerleading. The Jackson girls, state runner-up in Division I game day, 3rd in the state in Division I non-build. So the Jackson girls had a phenomenal, run down there in the States. And then, Mitch, the Lake Blue Streaks cheerleading team.
Yes.
What a remarkable run by them. The Lake Blue Streaks cheer squad, Division II state champs. Remarkable run by them as well. So we obviously always talk about right now what the biggest sport is going on, but this is something that shouldn't be overlooked as well. So congratulations on Jackson, state runner-up, but then Lake, Division II state champions in state cheer. Just congratulations. That's remarkable. It's amazing. And I know they're very excited over there in Uniontown about this accomplishment.
You want to talk about a town that's exciting right now? Bowerston, a little community here in Northeast Ohio, bringing back home a state championship trophy for the first time in its history. Conotton Valley's girls bowling team were victorious in the Division II state meet this past Friday at Wayne Webb's Columbus Bowl. They were able to beat St. Mary's Memorial, Carrollton, and Sandusky Perkins. Once you got out of qualifying play, you ended up going into the tournament, and Conotton Valley was in third going into the tournament. They ended up winning, ended up beating Sandusky Perkins in the final. You had standout performances by Daphne Stuber, who had a 626 tournament total, fourth among all individual bowlers. There were like 55 individual scores near the top of the list. Mackenzie Willoughby, a junior, was 10th individually at 587, while you had a freshman in Delilah Williams rolling a 553, finishing 24th overall. And congratulations to Conotton Valley's girls squad. The boys actually finished in the final four, as it's a good time to be a Rockets student athlete in general. You got the new facilities over there. You have some programs on the up and up, including this bowling squad, Mitch, that posted some Final Four finishes. We haven't seen Conotton Valley in a lot of Final Fours in the past, but this is one that they're going to be treasuring for a long time.
Hey, any state championship is special. The first in a school's history is even more special, Mitch. And don't look at me crazy here, but sometimes the first one's the hardest one to get. And then next thing you know, your other teams can start to, it's crazy, right? I saw it here in 2010 with Jackson winning their first basketball state championship. You've seen it at other schools around the area. Once you get that first one, it's almost like it's contagious. It raises the bar for every other program within the athletic department, and other teams want to be able to do the same thing. So we'll have to wait and see what else Conotton Valley can do, but just once again, congratulations. A lot of state championships won this weekend that were competed for, a lot of state runner-ups, and who knows, Mitch, maybe we'll have a couple more we're talking about here next week and in a couple weeks.
No doubt. And that's all we have for the first segment. We'll be right back right here after these messages here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
Buying a home has never been so affordable with record low interest rates. Hartzler's Quality Housing is ready to put over 40 years of experience to work for you. Family owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's has a wide selection of model homes on site with a knowledgeable team to help make your new home a reality. Open 6 days a week. Visit them off I-77 in Dover or online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
You invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates want you to feel secure should anything happen to those investments. We partnered with providers like Grange Insurance and other industry leaders to be sure you're presented with the most complete coverage to fit your needs. Because we're not only here to protect the items you invest in, we're here to protect your future as well.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries. Or a hamburger without the fresh beef. No! Level low. Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
Offer for a limited time at participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in the contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
Vive Auto Sales, located on West High Avenue in New Philadelphia and Cleveland Avenue in Canton, is a used car dealership committed to getting financing for everyone. We give every customer that walks in our showrooms a prime buying experience, no matter their credit score or financial situation. Current inventory can be viewed at www.wefinancenow.com. Check out our Facebook pages for the most up-to-date information about upcoming events and promotions happening at Vive Auto Sales.
Aaron back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell alongside Mitchell Balla. Mitch, we're here to talk about a number of things here, including the NBA, where the Cavaliers were kind of off on them right now, mainly because they only really played one game, I believe, since we've gone off of the podcast. I was there on that Saturday night, in which they're able to beat the Pistons. It took them a first half to really get themselves woken up, but once they got in the second half, there was no turning back, and that Pistons team was just, they didn't really have anybody on the court that night. The Cavaliers did what they had to do. So now they're going to play Boston on Monday night. And last time we went with a podcast going into a Celtics-Cavs game, they got the doors ripped out from under what's the term? The floor, what was it?
Doors blown off?
Doors blown off, basically. Yeah, I was thinking like the rug pulled out from under them, but well, the Cavaliers, I think they'll fare better tonight. It's at home. They have most of their guys healthy for tonight, so it should be a better game than what we've been seeing in the last couple of ones. And the Celtics, by the way, I'm happy we're playing them tonight because transitions into our first topic here, where for the second time in less than 2 weeks, the Knicks and the Celtics play a very solid nationally televised basketball game, because last night's final was 131-129 in double overtime, a game that was close from pretty much beginning to end. New York kind of, got themselves back in it in the third quarter, but on the run after Boston kind of stretched out in the second. But you had a number of great performances on the night. The one standout being Emmanuel Quickly, who looked like an all-star in those final three-ish periods. 38 points, 15 of 28 from the floor, being guarded by Marcus Smart, of all people. You had RJ Barrett there with 29 points, Julius Randle with 31 points, Mitchell Robinson 13 and 14 against a Jason Tatum 40-point burger. And then you had a number of other points there as well. Al Horford had 20, Jaylen Brown 29. So great game all around. But this is the Knicks' 8th win in a row, Mitch. This team was 31-27 at the start of the streak. They're 39-27 now. They are climbing in the standings right now. According to last check, they were 5th, right behind the 4th place Cavaliers. So I think it pertains back to these topics we've been having, where I'm very curious to see what the Knicks can do to these Cavaliers, not just in the standings, but also the fact that they beat them earlier on in the season at the Garden. And I'm wondering if the Knicks are this one team that is coming up now that people are really going to have to take seriously. And I'm very surprised that more people are not doing it at this point.
I think more people aren't doing it at this point because we've seen the Knicks sometimes recently, not a whole lot, but we've seen them do this before, and it's a tough matchup in the first round. But Mitch, there's a name you didn't mention in that Knicks win last night, and that was one Jalen Brunson.
Yes.
And for them to win last night in double overtime versus the Celtics, that's a huge win. And now the Cavaliers can feel someone breathing on their neck because the Knicks are one game behind them. And with the Celtics coming into town, Mitch, off a double overtime loss, getting into town late, and I mean, everybody played last night. They're going to be more tired than usual than you would on a back-to-back. To me, Mitch, this is pretty close to a must-win game for the Cavs because you do not want to flirt with falling out of the 4th spot to the 5 spot because home court advantage for this team is huge. Don't believe me? The Cavs are 27-7 at home and 13-9 on the road.
Yeah.
Playing in Cleveland at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse for this team that is very young is a huge boost of confidence. And it's something they have to have when it comes to the playoffs, at least for the first round, if you want to see them win a series. Now, listen, could they go on the road and beat the Knicks? Yes, because it is a magical place in Madison Square Garden. Donovan Mitchell is from there. We know this, but at the same time, just focus on getting that top 4 spot and making sure if it goes 7, you're playing in Cleveland rather instead of Madison Square Garden, where that crowd is going to be in a frenzy. We've seen it before. But Mitch, with them playing the Celtics tonight, they lost 117-113 last Wednesday. The score really not as close as the game really was. The third quarter, they blew out the Cavs. We mentioned they outscored them 41-26. The Celtics outscored the Cavs. And really that was it. Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, Mitch, got pushed around. They got bullied in that. Evan Mobley, 12 points. He was 6 of 15 from the field. Jared Allen, 5 points and 7 rebounds. Probably one of his worst games this season as a starting center. They have to come out tonight and they have to play one of their better games of the season because we saw Saturday night Donovan Mitchell leave. Already today, we see that he's at shoot around with his fingers taped together.
Yep.
He might not be 100%. There's a chance, Mitch, he might not play by the time we get to 7 o'clock tonight, but it looks like he's going to be available.
I think he's going to play. Yeah.
I would hope he would, because this is a huge game for the Cavs. At the same time, is Al Horford really going to shoot 6 of 8 from 3 and score 23 points tonight?
Probably not.
Probably not. That was probably, I didn't look it up, but that's probably one of his best games he's played all season. Tatum had 41, and we know that, and I expressed this last time, we don't have anybody to stop him. But if you can limit everybody else like you did that night outside Al Horford, you're going to be in a spot to win the game. You held Jaylen Brown to 16 points because Isaac Okoro can guard him a little bit better, because Donovan Mitchell has bought into the defense here since coming to Cleveland. Mitch, this is a huge game for the Cavs tonight. This is practically a must-win, in my opinion, because you do not want to get into a situation where you all of a sudden are falling behind the Knicks. And look, I'm still hopeful the Knicks have peaked too early. There's still a long ways to go here in the NBA season. You can always hope they peak too early and they get in the playoffs and they're just not as hot. But why take that risk if you can control your own destiny, which is what they're doing here tonight? You mentioned this segment already. They beat the Pistons. It took them a half to wake up. End of the story is they beat a team they should have beat. And I told you last week, they have to take care of business. And I believe when I looked it up, before that Pistons game, there were 17 games left. 9 of them were against teams below 500. You have 8 games remaining against teams below 500. The Cavaliers, Mitch, in my opinion, if they want to hold on to this 4 seed and they're going to lose to some good teams the rest of the way, they're going to have to win all 8 of those games to have a fighting chance. We'll see what happens, but going to Miami twice still is worrisome. Philadelphia still. Chicago, all of a sudden, Mitch, is playing a little bit better. I know they've lost 2 in a row, but they're playing better. The Pacers, all of a sudden, Mitch, they're 4-6 in the last 10. But some of those wins were big-time road wins. Last night, they beat the Bulls at the buzzer. They beat Dallas last week. You're starting to get into a territory now where early on in the season, they dropped a game here. Okay, so what? You know, that West Coast swing where they started out, I believe, 2-0 and they lost the next 5. It was, okay, it's okay. You're at a spot now where you can't have that anymore. And we need to see a revitalized, re-energized Cavaliers team tonight at home. I know that Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse will be rocking, but the Cavs just cannot afford right now to drop a game. And they also haven't beaten a team over 500 in a few weeks, Mitch. I mean, it's been a while since they beat a team over 500. They need to make a statement tonight.
I think the goal at this point is to get to like the 48 to 50 win range, because you mentioned the 8 games against those sub 500 teams with the 17 left in the season. It's doable. It's very possible that they can get to there. And with the Knicks, I think it's a matter of them being at least top 5 team by the end, because the Nets, even though they lost 2 they've won 2 in a row, are still kind of bottoming out. Miami and Atlanta, I don't expect them to be able to play catch up, but at the same time, you never know. And I'm curious to see if the Knicks will peak early enough to a point where it's going to cost them, especially against the Cavaliers in a potential first round matchup. And granted, the Cavaliers have a little bit of ground to work with as well. I mean, 3.5 games back at the Sixers, even though the level between those two teams feels very, very spacious. Now, one of the games that I was able to catch up on early on yesterday was the thriller in Dallas between the Mavericks and the Suns, a game in which you had all the stars were able to ball out in the way you needed them to make it a great nationally televised game. You had Kevin Durant, 37 points in 40 minutes, 12 of 17 from the floor. Devin Booker, 36 points, 10 assists, added in 5 rebounds. Even DeAndre Ayton, who had 9 points in the game, he's not like the biggest star, but he had 16 boards for Phoenix, and he's the big post presence there. Then you go on Dallas' side, 34 points for Luka, 9 rebounds. Kyrie, 30 points, 7 assists. Even Tim Hardaway and Christian Wood combined for 38 points off the bench. But it was that one key play, that 2-foot bunny that Luka missed at the end. Durant gets the rebound. He has to foul him. Devin Booker said something just to reiterate how much people dislike the Phoenix Suns at this reign of the NBA. And, the Suns, they get a double technical, so they have to go. They basically just run out the clock. Dallas had no time left to be able to come back. And then Durant, give him credit, was able to make a couple of key baskets late in the game and capitalize off of Mavericks' mistakes. But this is one where this is along with Knicks and Celtics, this is the 7-game postseason series that everybody wants to see at this moment, especially considering what happened last year.
Yeah. Listen, it was a phenomenal game, a very fun game. It was two of the top teams in the West that you'd expect to be playing at a high level, and we know has some history after last year. And Mitch, I dislike Devin Booker so much. I don't dislike him the most at any player in the NBA. Right now, that would be Dylan Brooks of the Grizzlies, and then probably just the entire Grizzlies roster besides Steven Adams. But Luka even said after the game, talking trash is fair. Don't do it with 3 seconds left if you're not going to talk trash all game, though. We know Luka talks trash. I've seen it before.
Yeah.
Obviously, watching games, he's said it before on a podcast that JJ Redick hosts. Luka talks trash, and for good reason. When you're as good of a player as Luka, you're an up-and-coming superstar, if not already, probably going to be the face of the NBA here within the next 5 years. By all means, you can say whatever you want. But Devin Booker, Mitch, he poked the bear in the finals against the Bucks.
Right.
2-0 lead for the Suns, and then the Bucks score 4 in a row after he poked the bear in Giannis. He poked the bear last year in the Mavericks, and we saw what happened. And here he is yet again poking the bear. Yes, it was a big-time regular season win. Yes, the Suns now have won 3 in a row. They sit 2 games up on the Warriors in the standings in the West. They're currently 4th, and the Mavericks now drop to the 7th spot. But Devin Booker, what are you doing? Like, this guy, Mitch, has just become so unlikable for, I feel like, everybody outside of Phoenix. He's a very good player. I've never been one to say I think he's one of the top players in the NBA, but I want to see the Mavericks and Suns play because I would love to see if he stands on what he did yesterday that resulted in, I believe, a double technical, and how Luka responds. Because we know when you poke the bear in Luka comes out strong and performs well and will have a say in the outcome of a game. And really, Mitch, 9 times out of 10, I think Luka Doncic hits that shot yesterday that he missed, the little bunny floater at the rim. I think, to your point, people want to see Celtics and Knicks in the first round. I think the entire NBA wants to see the Suns and the Mavericks, and for good reason. I think these two teams are evenly matched. I think obviously the Suns have more star power and bigger names and have a size advantage. But in terms of guard play, Chris Paul is not what he was, and now you have Luka and Kyrie there, Mitch. It's a lot of fun. And the West, all of a sudden, Mitch, which I think we're going to get into here with another story, is all of a sudden nothing really is set in stone besides who the number 1 team in the West is right now.
I mean, you look at some of the standings here, it really is just Denver and everybody else. They're kind of just chilling at 45 and 19. They're not really doing anything right now. Phoenix, they got their thing going on. Golden State can't win on the road. Minnesota is kind of in that mix weirdly. Dallas is still in the play-in. LA is still in the play-in. And then, I skipped over one team because we don't know what's going to happen here in the next couple of weeks, depending on the developments from yesterday morning, where basically at like 6 a.m. or whatever it was, the entire Memphis Grizzlies organization paraphrase the quote from one of Dave Chappelle's specials, "Where is Ja?" Because there was the Instagram story that came up of Ja Morant in a nightclub, seemingly just holding a gun, and it just added to this. Has it been a week since this avalanche of stuff has started with Ja Morant? I mean, it's amazing how last year at this point he was one of the most improved young superstars in the NBA. He made the jump. Memphis was able to make a bit of a run and get some people really excited about where they're going on this season. And they're still a good team. They're still second in the West. The West is tough. And when you're second in the West, that shows you're a good team. So good that apparently Ja thought he was not going to have any problems in the West. You heard that quote from a few weeks ago before the deadline. And then, got a couple of losses here and there. And now this off the court stuff is snowballing for him. You have the gun incident. You have his buddy getting banned from the Memphis State arena for a year. You have him and that friend being involved in a lawsuit where apparently they might have punched a 17-year-old. It's weird. And now you see him getting suspended for 2 games. Then it comes out and says, I need to take some time off here. I need to find myself, essentially. It's fascinating to see how fast it has developed, or I guess regressed, for Ja.
And Mitch, another thing that really, without getting too deep into it, but this, in terms of guns, is a very big thing in Tennessee right now. We saw something happen weeks ago that I won't go into detail with, obviously gun violence. Okay. And that is something that the Grizzlies head coach, Taylor Jenkins, said yesterday in a quote, and I'll read it to you right here. Obviously, nationwide, league-wide, there's been a lot of attention on gun violence. And so for us, that's a stance that we've taken about and how we can support Ja throughout this growth opportunity. It's a learning opportunity, and hopefully we can be better from it, end quote. Mitch, they had a moment of silence a couple weeks ago. You mentioned the first with, I believe it was against the Pacers, with his buddy who's now suspended from the Memphis arena now for over a year. Then obviously the accusation of altercation with the 17-year-old. And now this, it's almost like he thinks he's untouchable, which to a degree on the outside, it ultimately looks like athletes are put on this pedestal and they really can't be touched. But what he's done now is he's pretty much thrown himself out there to say, hey, look, I think I'm untouchable. And it's not the truth. The Grizzlies did what they needed to do. And really, you just have to hope that Ja Morant, who is a sensational talent, who is a young star in the NBA, who, Mitch, really was one of the most likable players in the NBA before this season. You have to hope he can figure it out, because the Grizzlies had become one of the teams that I believe recently, from what I read when they did a survey, are one of the most hated teams in the NBA. And it's not because of Ja, it's because of Dylan Brooks and other antics that the Grizzlies do. But this team's become unlikable. And now, Mitch, Ja is going to miss crucial games. This is a team that is trying to lock up the 2 seed in the West and now has the Sacramento Kings 1 game behind them. And then 3 games behind are the Phoenix Suns, who are only going to keep winning because they got Kevin Durant. And you mentioned it was 2 games at first. Now there's really no timetable for return, said head coach Taylor Jenkins of the Grizzlies. By the end of this, Mitch, who knows? I'm not saying I think the Grizzlies fall all the way down to the play-in. I don't really think that's possible because they have a 5.5 game lead on the Timberwolves at 6. But Mitch, you said they could fall to the 4 seed. It wouldn't shock me, because we don't know how long Ja will be out. And when he comes back, what is he going to look like? Where's his head at? Especially going into road arenas now. I'm not going to sit here and lecture. There's been plenty of people in the media that get paid more than you and I that have, places to touch on this, and Shannon Sharp's one of them. Jalen Rose gave a very powerful stance, because we know Jalen Rose had a lot of off the court issues, both at Michigan and then in the NBA. So those guys would know better than you and I. Obviously, you hope Ja Morant can get help and figure out and realize that what he did was not right in any way. But this not only hurts him, but it hurts his team. And that's the bigger thing, because the Grizzlies now, Mitch, are in danger of dropping out of having home court potentially all the way through the second round if they were to meet Denver in the Western Conference Finals.
Well, I'm happy you brought up the Michigan thing because I was actually, believe it or not, thinking about this sort of situation involving the Wolverine squad yesterday. You mentioned Jalen Rose. His teammate Chris Webber was also a private, well, like John Morant, was a private school player. He went to Detroit Country Day School. The name that John Morant went to escapes me. And by the way, I should re-clarify. The Grizzlies said that Ja would be out at least 2 games before his statement on saying he's going to take, it's going to be more so indefinite. I think I said the NBA at first suspended him, and that's incorrect. But kind of thinking of where what he's doing in perspective of where he came up from. And I'm not saying that Ja had the easiest life in the world, but he's kind of acting as if he came up from this hard, tough upbringing. And this wasn't necessarily the case. And I think people are kind of harping on that more so just for the hypocrisy of, you want to act like a tough guy or whatever. You came up from a 2-parent household. You went to Murray State, you went to a private school. And I understand. It's not that I don't understand. I can see why people are harping on it more than if he actually did come up as somebody who had a tough life. Let's say Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson had a background that it led to people being concerned of him pre-draft. It had a stigma against him throughout the earlier parts of his career. But that dude legitimately came from the place that's between a rock and a hard place. Ja, it just kind of feels like, what are you doing, guy? You have all of it here. You got the Nike contract that was taken from Kyrie and given to you, and you're going to put up this facade that is it's too much now at this point to be offset. It's kind of like with, some people said Kyrie a few months ago. It's too much now to offset the level of talent that you bring to the basketball court at this point. Obviously, the situation between Kyrie and Ja are very different. The details are different, but I don't know. The only thing you can hope for now is that he kind of gets his mind in check. He can return to the team at a viable point when he's ready, and they can find their way back into another run towards the deeper part of the West playoffs. But it's not going to be easy right now for them or him.
Right. And you mentioned the Nike contract, Mitch. That does not kick in until next year. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they could take it away. But, Mitch, there is a possibility that he could do something. There's still the possibility that Ja could be suspended by the league. If not, potentially fined. It's in the collective bargaining agreement. It forbids players possessing a firearm while at an NBA facility or traveling for league business. We'll see what happens. Obviously, the notable name in terms of being suspended for a firearm possession was Gilbert Arenas back in 2010. We know what happened there, but there's still more that could come out of this. And ultimately, you hope John Morant can get it because he is a fun, exciting player. Besides all the things he says off the floor about not being afraid in the West. I think he is a little afraid in the West. I know I would be with the other teams that are in there. But we'll have to wait and see what goes on here. And, obviously hope he gets the help he needs, and obviously hope he understands where he went wrong here. I think that's the bigger understanding, Mitch, because he is young. He's very young still. Yeah. He's younger than you and I as we're sitting here doing this. And sometimes you don't get it. Hopefully he gets it and can turn it around, because it's not a good look for him or the Grizzlies. And I'm sure the NBA isn't happy either, because he is, along with Luka and along with these other young stars, he is going to be a face of the association here in the next 5 years once some of these all-time greats that we have right now either slow down and or retire.
So I was looking up some more details on the incident on his Instagram live story the other night. So it was at a Denver club that this gun incident seemingly took place. So one of two things might have happened. Number one, how did Ja Morant get a gun in Denver? And number two, how did Ja, if he had the gun with him, how did he get a gun onto the plane? Because isn't that a whole thing where the NBA has like some very strict rules regarding firearms? It pertains to that Gilbert Arenas thing from a few years ago. Oh my Lord.
That's what I mentioned. It says while at an NBA facility or traveling for league business. He did this after a 113-97 loss to Denver, before they got on a plane to fly to LA and take on the Clippers. That, to me, Mitch, I'm not obviously in the NBA, or else I more than likely wouldn't be doing this. Who knows? It could be. I kind kind of assumed that would be a business trip, if I'm not mistaken, even though they weren't in the plane yet when this happened. But you just played a game. You were flying out early the next morning to go to another city to play a game. So that's why I think in this article on ESPN.com, it mentions that at the very bottom, and why I think there's still more to be seen. And if he is either A, fined, or B, suspended.
This is, hold on. Oh, I almost stopped the whole broadcast there. That's pretty much it. That is it. That's what we're going for. And but at the same time, as much as we kind of are making, I'm making a little bit light of it right now. You're kind of just sitting there. So it's not guilt by association. I'm hoping that help can be had for him to get his head on straight at the same time, get the team back on track. Not so much on track that you run into Cleveland in the finals and then they end up beating you, but that's not here nor there.
Right.
All right. So when we come back, we're going to go over some more segments here. We also have a special guest coming up right after this.
The Furby Electric Supply Company has bright ideas for your home. Save money by converting to energy-efficient electrical products or add ambiance with beautiful lighting features. It begins with a professional consultation and a visit to the Furby Lighting Showroom. Then certified Furby contractors complete your project right and on time. Since 1934, 4 generations have built a reputation of quality and trust, and they offer emergency services too. Just visit Furby.com. That's F-U-R-B-A-Y. The Furby Electric Supply Company.
You asked for it and we listened. Buckeye Career Center is now offering Certified Nail Technician as an adult education program. This 216-hour course begins in November and will run Tuesday through Thursday evenings from 5 to 9 p.m. Learn manicures, pedicures, infection control, salon operations, and more. Other part-time certification courses starting this fall include phlebotomy and welding. Call 330-339-2288 to register or visit BuckeyeCareerCenter.org for more information.
If you're looking for a new or pre-owned car or truck, why not see the Parkway Auto Group? Parkway is a special group of automotive experts with 8 brands to satisfy your needs. Come see the difference at the Parkway Auto Group on Commercial Parkway in Dover. 8 brands and 1 family. It's Parkway Auto Group.
Fall is in the air and part-time career enhancement courses at Buckeye Career Center are on the horizon. Registration is now open for Introduction to Beekeeping, Basic Small Engine Repair, and Sign Language. These part-time offerings run on Tuesday evenings and begin in November. Let Buckeye Career Center help you learn a new skill or advance your current skill set. Call 330-339-2288 for more information or to reserve your seat in one of these or our other part-time classes.
You matter. Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. Alt Care.
Alt Care, Alt Care. Where you matter.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
And we welcome you back here to the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. It is now time for a special segment in which we bring in a special guest with the news release of the Miss Ohio basketball nominations for the 2022-23 campaign. I am now sitting down with one of those nominees rather. It is REAGAN VINSKOVICH of Union Local High School. REAGAN, I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to sit down and do this interview.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So obviously, as I mentioned up the top, you are one of 7 nominees for the Miss Ohio basketball honor, with the winner to be announced on March 8th. Now, kind of take me through that feeling of getting a nomination like this, being considered one of the top players in the state.
It feels like a big accomplishment, especially seeing the rest of the nominations. I actually played with Riley and Dee, so it's cool to just do something like that with them.
Those girls that you mentioned, Riley Sager and Dee Alexander, you guys are part of the West Virginia Thunder travel team. I mean, kind of take me through what that experience is like and how it compares to your progress over at Union Local.
Definitely playing with Thunder was a smart decision. Just the whole Under Armour circuit is a completely different like type of basketball. It's really, really hard to keep up with everybody. So
I was going to ask you, what is the travel like in your guys' league compared to maybe something like a regular AAU squad?
when I started out with just kind of like regular, like smaller GBA stuff, it wasn't very much travel, just stayed pretty much in the state or like close to West Virginia. And then with Thunder, we really expanded our range. So I think that's where I got a lot of my like attention from college coaches was traveling around because we went like Alabama was probably one of my favorite tournaments.
All right. Well, I mean, obviously you've had quite a celebrated career at Union Local with all the accomplishments you've had, including but not limited to this past season, becoming the 9th OVAC female player to score 2,000 points for a career. You also reach your 1,000 career rebounds, setting that mark for boys and girls among both Jets programs. I mean, when you look back at some of the things that you've been able to accomplish as an individual player and as a team, does it hit even at this point of the season, or has it kind of been a gradual picking up of the feeling of these accomplishments?
I've definitely been like I've had my goals set since my freshman year. I remember telling one of my teammates my freshman year I wanted to score 2,000 points. I never even thought about 1,000 rebounds just because it wasn't like a common thing. Never thought about it, but then once I started getting closer, I kind of thought like that would be something cool to do too. So it's just kind of like it's all starting to hit now that it's over.
Going back to some of the stuff you guys accomplished as a team this year, you guys were able to win a significant part of the season. Class A 3A champions in the OVAC Buckeye 8 conference. You end up going to the Region 11 semifinals. I mean, kind of take me through where you're at this point of it's the end basically, and you look back at what you were able to do this year compared to your previous seasons. What are some of the things that you were able to fully realize, and what are some of the other things you wish would have turned out a little bit differently?
I think the past 2 years we've definitely accomplished way more than anybody ever expected out of us. I think that all of our work like during the summer kind of like helped us lead up to that. And especially this summer we started doing like weightlifting and really taking everything seriously. So I think that really helped us. And I don't wish anything differently from last year. And this year, obviously, I wish differently that that 2-point game would have ended a little differently, but everything happens for a reason. So
I was going to ask you yourself, how do you think your game has changed from the start of your first year in high school to where it is currently? And obviously, there's the general growth that comes with playing all 4 years, but are there any particular areas that you think I've been able to improve on or I've been able to stay steady on?
offensively, I think I've extended my range a little bit, which is something that I really wanted to do before I enter college. And then defensively, I'm just trying to work on like keeping up with people and just like staying in front of people. So definitely having all 4 years to play at the varsity level was something that helped me grow in a lot of different aspects with basketball.
Well, we'll get to college in a second, but obviously this interview, the reason why we're here today is because of my reaching out to Coach Tolsda. Coach Tolsda was obviously not here at the start of your high school career at Union Local, but when he was able to come in, how is your guys' relationship from the start kind of compared to where it is now? And also, where do you think that he was able to kind of really help progress your game? What areas, I should say?
I think as a team, he came in and he was very clear about like setting goals, and we have a sign that we brought to every game with all of our season goals that we wanted to accomplish as a team. And I think just being like honest with ourselves, like having a lot of reflection over every game, just like the honesty with ourselves and as a group really helped us accomplish everything. So I think just pretty much like a lot of the reflection we've all done together has really improved.
Well, you mentioned college. You will be attending West Liberty in the upcoming season, and I was going through some of the articles regarding your commitment, and it did mention a few names. Obviously, your own Twitter page kind of mentioned visits to places like Marshall and Youngstown State. What was it about West Lib specifically that that made you wanted to choose that program over, let's say, a Division I school?
So my brother actually goes to West Liberty. He's
Yes.
on the track team. So that was another like deciding factor. But overall, just it felt more like a personal connection than like a business. And after my first visit, I had like gone around toward the campus. I was familiar with the campus already just from like being around there with my brother. So it just seemed like somewhere I'd want to be. I didn't want to go super far away. And I feel like I would really fit in with their players. I really like all of them. So it just seems like, and their style of play, I really like their style of play. So it just seemed like a really good fit.
Well, along with progressing with the Liberty program, what are some of your post-high school career goals? What are you trying to kind of learn and grow in as you go into this next chapter of your life?
Definitely, I'm interested in learning new systems. They have a very fast-paced game, which Union Local, like we obviously have our fast pace too. So I'm just excited to see how all the rules change. Like there's no 5-second call with a 30-second shot clock. Like it's going to be way different playing with a shot clock. The only time I've ever done that is with Under Armour. So it's definitely going to be different, but I'm hoping that it's a good transition.
Now, with that, you leave the Jets program, and obviously you've made friends along the way. You've been able to create a lot of memories on and off the court. Are there any particular ones that you yourself would like to let the people know of?
This season was probably like the most sentimental to me because obviously it's my senior year, but it was the only year that I'll be able to play with my sister, who's a freshman, Lakin. So that was definitely something that I was really looking forward to. So I'm just sad it's over.
So we start off here. Speaking of one of your former teammates on WV, Riley Sagester, she was recently seen doing a radio broadcast of a game. Have you yourself ever done a TV or radio broadcast of a game? And if not, would you ever want to do one?
I have not ever done a radio broadcast of a game. I did see her pictures on Twitter. It definitely seems fun. So that sounds like something I'd want to do.
So you actually retweeted one thing it said. It was comparing these 4 basketballs on Twitter, and your pick was number 1. Yep. Now, I've only used maybe 1 or 2 of these. Take me through the difference between each 4 of them and why number 1 is the best.
Okay. Number 1 is just traditional, like it feels like my high school basketball. So it's just the one I feel most comfortable with. Second one, it's not bad. It's close second. Third one, I just am not a huge fan of like the texture and it doesn't feel as squishy. And then the third one, the same thing, just not a huge fan of the texture. So number 1's definitely going to have to be my pick for this one.
I was going to say another topic that we like to talk about here is music. Are there any particular artists that you yourself, Reagan, think that other people should be listening to at this very moment?
This is probably a little biased, but I really like Post Malone. He's like my favorite person ever. So definitely Post Malone.
Final question for you, and obviously, and this kind of pertains to something we talked about earlier, but with it being the end of your 4 years at Union Local, is there any particular message that you not only want to send to your teammates, to your coaches, I know coaches in there with you, but to the fans and of course your family and friends who are supporting you game in and game out?
I would like to thank everyone that comes to the games. We've really grown a huge fan base with the women's basketball program here. And I think that's something that's really important. And I know we have impacted a lot of like younger girls just with the youth program. We always have like a big group of little girls that come to all of our home games. And I think that's like something that we all take pride in, knowing that we have a lot of little girls looking up to us. And then for my teammates, just taking it all in before it's over because it goes by really fast. Like you don't think that when you're like a freshman that it's all going to go by so fast, and like you got to practice and you're like, oh, I just don't want to be here. Like I want to go to more practices and have more games. So definitely don't take it for granted.
Then one last quick one. What specific message would you give to your sister as she continues her high school career?
Definitely to put the time in because you get in what you put out. So just to put in the work, and I'm definitely going to miss being on her team.
Reagan, I do want to thank you for taking the time out of your day once again, and best of luck to you, not only in your upcoming graduation, but the remainder of your basketball career and the rest of your college days over at West Lib.
Thank you.
And that is Reagan VINSKOVICH here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. We'll be back right after this. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
Are you trying to increase your speed, quickness, vertical leap, and agility? If so, NST Sports Performance is for you. NST trains athletes ages 5 through pro. NST designs each program specific to the athlete's needs, goals, and sports. For more, visit nstsports.com. Locations in North Canton and New Philadelphia. It's nstsports.com.
It takes a lot of practice to have a winning team. Albin Title has over 100 years of combined experience handling real estate, title, and escrow transactions. They serve Tuscarawas, Stark, Carroll, Harrison counties, and more. So choose Albin Title for your next home refinance, sale, or purchase. They'll get it done quickly and professionally. Contact Albin Title at 330-334-5800 or visit their website albintitle.com. Let them put their experience to work for you.
Hard work is something you're accustomed to. Van Nostrand Young understands that principle. Our access is achieved with organizations like Grange Insurance. Safety and prevention specialists utilize our VanCan assessments process to ensure that you and your colleagues are in the best hands. You want the safest environment for your business, and we can guide you there.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
If you're purchasing a new home, the team at Hartzler's Quality Housing is here to help. Take advantage of record low interest rates to make your new home a reality. Locally owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's Quality Housing has the experience to guide you through the process. You'll find a wide selection of model homes on site to fit any budget. Open 6 days a week just off I-77. You can also visit them online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries. Or a hamburger without the fresh beef. No! Level up. Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
Offer for a limited time at participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in the contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
All right, we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch, before we get into our final topics here, I have to ask, did you catch any of UFC 285 the other night on Saturday?
I did not. I fell asleep.
Oh, you missed a great 124-second fight, my man. John Bones Jones got back in the ring for the first time in 3 years and dominated to the point where people are like, this guy is back. He's one of the great all-time UFC fighters. And there's speculation, Mitch, that the next fight that he could be facing here in the octagon could be in one Cleveland native, Stipe Miocic, which could be a very, very fascinating fight. I'm not saying it's going to happen because there's many other fighters, I'm sure, that are through the circuit right now in the UFC that could be wanting to face off with Jones. But him getting back the title is very fascinating for the sport. And I'm very curious to see where his title reign will go. Now, we want to go over to the NFL. We got some breaking news this morning. We have some other developing things here as the morning goes on. It's the team that I thought Derek Carr was going to go to, the Saints. He's going to the Saints. He was reportedly signing for 4 years, which is a very interesting kind of long-term-ish deal that New Orleans is going for, and they're going to give him some good money, presumably. Carr confirming the news, it seems, on his Twitter page, and multiple reports there as well. So Derek Carr, there was an interesting stat somebody put up. I think the Raiders ranked among the bottom 5 to 7 teams in total defense over the last handful of seasons during Carr's reign in Oakland and Vegas. Saints were 5th in the league in defense last year. So it's going to be very interesting to see if Carr will now have a template that he can use to develop into an even better quarterback than he was in with the Raiders. And we'll see if do you think the Saints right now are the default NFC South pick, or do you still think it's kind of open?
No, it has to be the Saints, Mitch. And listen, there's still more that's going to play out. Obviously, we're going to talk about potential free agents here in this segment, legal tampering period opening up. But just right now on paper, Tom Brady gone from the Bucks. They're going to cut Leonard Fournette. The Panthers, what are they going to do? Right? Are they going back with Sam Darnold? Are they going to draft another quarterback? There's Matt Corral there, new head coach there, and Frank Wright. The Falcons just kind of caught in the middle. They're going to go Desmond Ridder. Mitch, could they potentially go get Lamar Jackson? What is going to happen here? As of it's now, where it stands, the Saints to me are the clear-cut best team in the NFC South and should be the favorites to win the NFC South next year. The 4-year deal, I think, makes a little bit of sense considering Kamara and Michael Thomas, your top 2 offensive players, although Michael Thomas has not been healthy, are under contract for the next 3 seasons at least. So you have your top 2 weapons. Now you have a quarterback that you've been missing for 2 years since Drew Brees retired. I would think this is a big spot for them. Derek Carr is not a top quarterback in the league. He's middle of the pack, but middle of the pack with those type of weapons, Mitch, should get the job done.
I mean, yeah, especially with another offensive talent too, and Chris Olave, one of the young up-and-comers. He can be very, very interesting for this Saints offense. And since Dennis Allen's pretty much going to be focusing on the defense a lot too, it can kind of take some pressure off in that retrospect. The Saints 20th in scoring offense, 19th in total offense last season. So I'm assuming those numbers will be boosted up a little bit following this news today. And, we're kind of just focusing on some things right now as you mentioned the tampering period, franchise tags end on or have to come by Tuesday. So we'll see a number of teams presumably, I keep struggling with that word, presumably focusing in on tagging their players rather than giving them long-term options. We've been talking about Lamar Jackson so far this offseason, about how, apparently he and the Ravens are still very ways apart right now. Just kind of a tough offseason for Baltimore at this point. We're basking in it, but at the same time, we got our own issues. Another one that I wanted to talk about too was the report of Daniel Jones's contract too, because it was on Friday, I believe, that the $45 million per year number that was reported the week before that Jones apparently wanted, it might have even been higher than that, according to some reports. But there was a report from, I believe it was Monday Morning Quarterback, or maybe it was Albert Breer, where it was the Giants and Daniel Jones's agents have closed the financial gap significantly. They've met multiple times in New Jersey. They'll meet again today in hopes of doing something ahead of the franchise tag deadline. Do you see a tag coming in for Jones and the Giants in this 5th year, or do you think that they'll be able to broker something? Because I saw the Giants trying to give him 35 to 39 million. Jones wants at least 45 million, it seems. Could you see 41 to 42 million per year, or do you think that that's still even too high for the Giants to fully commit?
It's too high for the Giants to commit, Mitch. Before last season, we were talking about what quarterback are the Giants going to go get after this season because Daniel Jones has been that bad.
Right.
The guy had one good season. Yes, he played very well. Yes, Brian Daboll played a huge factor into that. But is Daniel Jones a top 10 quarterback in the league?
I wouldn't say so.
Then he should not be getting paid like he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. There's just no reason for it. And listen, it's your money. Go get whatever you think you're worth. And yes, there's plenty of quarterbacks getting a lot of money nowadays. They're getting paid more than what they're worth. I get it. But that is pretty bold of Daniel Jones to ask for at least $45 million after he's had one good season. They made the playoffs. They went and beat a fraudulent team in the Vikings, and then they got smoked by a division team that ultimately went to the Super Bowl and was a few seconds away of potentially winning or going to overtime. I think, though, what's going to happen first is, what are the Giants going to do with Saquon Barkley? I think that dictates what happens with Daniel Jones. If they give Barkley a giant deal, they may tag Daniel Jones and give him a prove-it year and say, hey, here, we're going to tag you. Go out and play. If it works out, we'll sign you. We'll give you it. But the sample size, Mitch, of his great play is minuscule compared to the rest of his career where he has been a bottom quarterback in the league. And I wouldn't sign him for that much money. Then again, more money's coming into the league. You know, the cap hit isn't going to be as big anymore because the cap is going to open up. They could swing it, but the Giants have other issues they have to address as well, Mitch. And we're seeing it now as Browns fans for the first time in our lifetime, Mitch. You have a quarterback you're paying a lot of money, obviously fully guaranteed. So it's going to hurt us in some aspect of being able to build a roster. I don't think the Giants want to go down this path of handicapping themselves, especially when you look. Saquon Barkley is a phenomenal running back, but Mitch, the best ability is availability. In what, 2 seasons now he's missed?
Right.
And so you don't want to handicap yourself if you re-sign him and then give Jones his contract to where you can't get an adequate backup for Saquon Barkley. Not to mention Daniel Jones runs and takes hits as well. You don't want to pay a quarterback this much money if he's not going to be able to stay healthy. And so this is very interesting. I personally thought $35 million was a lot for him.
Mm-hmm.
By all means, you do what's best for you. Whatever your agent says, you got to do it. But I think it's crazy that he thinks he's worth $45 million.
See, I was curious. Do you think that they would tag Barkley, give Daniel Jones the contract, and then because the thing is too, running backs, they're like, they don't last long nowadays in the NFL, even with it being a passer happy league. So would it make more sense to give Saquon Barkley this season and then be able to commit more money in the next offseason, even though you still have the Jones contract in there?
Yes, but at the same time, you said it as well. The shelf time of a running back in the NFL is not very long.
Right.
The reason I would pay Barkley is because he's not just a running back, right? We know he can catch passes out of the backfield. We know you get the ball in his hands, he is capable of making anything happen, whether that's a wheel route or swing pass out of the backfield, or you line him up as a wide receiver. The Giants are in a really tough spot here because you obviously want to build off what you did last year, right? You made the playoffs in a year. I think most of us, Mitch, expected them to be one of the bottom 10 teams in the NFL. You need to build off that, but you could build off it for one more year, but then you could eventually handicap yourself to a point where you're stuck in the middle, and you don't want to be stuck in the middle. And I think that's ultimately why some other news just came out of a certain team looking to shop a player is out there now, because there are teams stuck in the middle. There are teams making gigantic moves. There's still 2 huge moves to be made in the offseason in terms of quarterbacks, and one's Lamar, one's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But the Giants right now, Mitch, to me, are not at the level of being a serious contender in the NFC to win the NFC, but they're also not at the bottom to where it's like, all right, let's get some more draft picks and get better players. And in 3 or 4 years, we're going to be a team to be reckoned with.
Yeah, and the name that you mentioned, the story that came out today, and Twitter is letting me down on mobile today because every time I go to click a link, it just comes up error. But I think that Pro Football Talk one that you put up might have an error just regardless, because this stemmed from a Michael Silva report. I believe it was on Saturday, and it was re-brought up this morning, where it was a number of players are seemingly being shopped around the time of the combine. You have guys like, as you mentioned, Aaron Rodgers in the mix potentially. At this point, it just seems like the Packers are just like, stay with us, go somewhere else. We don't care at this point. It's the end of a bad relationship between two people, in this place, a player and a team. The other one is Derrick Henry potentially. And it's curious because the Titans have been moving on from a couple of other veterans this offseason. They're expected to release pass rusher Bud Dupree, who was owed $17 million this upcoming season. So that's one that they lose. And then Henry has been one of the top quality backs here for the last couple of seasons, even though wasn't able to do quite enough to get Tennessee into the playoffs this year. Granted, they had some issues with quarterback. I think it might just be them. If they fully commit and they actually do end up trading Henry, I think it's more so them being like, we're going to tank this season. We're going to go get Caleb Williams as number 1 in the next draft, and we're going to try and make him our franchise guy. That's what it pertains to me. That's how it pertains to me. I'm sure it does for everyone else, but now I'm curious as to where Henry could go as running back in what, his 8th season in the league, 9th?
A 29-year-old running back. And yeah, I believe he is reading the article right here, skim it quick to see if it says, doesn't say, but I do believe this is his 8th year. Maybe he just ended his 8th year. He has a base salary of $10.5 million, which is not guaranteed. If the Titans released him, they'd save $6.3 million on their salary cap. But going back to what we just said about Saquon Barkley and the lifetime of an NFL running back, Mitch, this is a guy that, yes, he has led the NFL in rushing a couple of times. Yes, he won Offensive Player of the Year back in 2020, I believe. How much longer does he really have, though? Because this is a running back that takes the most hits, just off the top of my head, out of anybody in the league, because he's so big and can run over people still and break multiple tackles. But it's not like you're trading for a guy in his prime. He's still very well, Mitch, I believe, in his prime, but he's near the end of his prime rather than in the beginning, entering the main part of his prime. The Titans are caught in the middle, though. They traded A.J. Brown last year. Ryan Tannehill's there. They drafted Malik Willis, and obviously we know they do not believe in him because of them starting Josh Dobbs in a winter-go-home game after only having him for, 13 days? This just opens up a lot of potential here in Tennessee, and ultimately, I believe, leading to a coach being a candidate to replace any coach opening next year in the NFL or college in Mike Vrabel, because I don't think Mike Vrabel wants to be a part of a rebuild with how he's talked in the past and how he's, always demanded excellence and wanting to be a top team in the NFL. This is going to be interesting. And I also don't think they're a contender in the AFC, but they are still there to win the AFC South.
Because it's so weak.
It's so weak, right? I mean, listen, we have to see what the Texans do. I firmly believe after what we saw this week at the Combine, Bryce Young would be a mistake. I just don't think he has the durability to last.
Yeah, we'll get to the go ahead.
Quarterback. The Colts, what are they going to do at quarterback? The Jaguars, I think, are obviously the team to beat, but they still have their flaws. This is very interesting. It's very interesting that it comes out right now. And I just don't know what the Titans could get back for him. I mean, do you think they could get a first-round pick back for Derrick Henry?
Oh, I think they could. Yeah, I still think they could get it at this point. By the way, he's going into his 8th season, by the way.
Okay.
So, I mean, he's 29 years old. Really got it going in his 3rd season in the league. So he's really only been a top NFL running back for the last 4 or 5 seasons now. So, I think there's still some good market for him. And any team like, let's say, Buffalo wanted to trade for him, that would be, say what you want about their defense. That offense would be a juggernaut in the league. And that would be a very, very interesting setup in the AFC. Now, a couple of things. Number one, as well, you mentioned the Mike Vrabel thing. If Ohio State didn't play that well in the Sugar Bowl a few weeks ago, this whole offseason would have been like, is Mike Vrabel come back to Ohio State? He's going to replace Ryan Day. I think that's put to bed for now. Now, I'm very curious to see where the other things go on Combine Week. By the way, we're getting some new reports now. The Cowboys putting the franchise tag on Tony Pollard for about over $10 million. It's likely the end of the Zeke Elliott era at this point. I think they're just going to go with Tony Pollard in the long term. Zeke is like Derrick Henry. He's around that age, and he's even more broken down than Henry is in terms of production. Apparently, the Jets liked Derek Carr, according to Albert Breer, but asked for patience. Aaron Rodgers and Lamar Jackson, obviously on their radar. I mean, so are the other teams for their radars as well. Jets and Aaron Rodgers. I see Aaron Rodgers going to the Raiders before I ever see them going to the Jets. And the Lamar Jackson situation is so strange. It's so strange, but we'll see where it goes. What was the other thing I was going to bring up? The Combine. The Combine was very interesting to me because we got to see some guys really show out. A lot of guys playing well. And you mentioned that Bryce Young being a mistake. What was he listed as? It was 5'10" and 204 pounds. I want to make sure I do get that right, but not a big boy, so to say. Combine measurements, but there were 2 quarterbacks. Okay, 5'10" and an eighth, 204 pounds, just to make sure. But the 2 guys that everybody was talking about was CJ Stroud. Obviously, we're going to cover him because I do think there's one team that is focusing in on him, and the other one being Anthony Richardson. We didn't know much about Anthony Richardson other than he played for Florida and he was a quarterback before going into this draft. And now he might be shooting up the top of the list late. He is a massive quarterback at 6'4", 244 pounds. And he ran a 4.43 40-yard dash to the combine. That's insane for a guy his size. His broad jump is at 10.9. His vertical jump, 40.5. Those were the best marks among the 9 quarterbacks who participated in these drills. So I am stunned by this. And I guess if I was a Florida fan, I'd be like, yeah, we knew about him the whole time. There. Could Richardson be the number one? Again, it depends on if Chicago trades this pick. I still think they're going to, but let's say a team like Houston gets in that mix. They trade up. Let's say a team like Indianapolis. Do they go with this guy from Florida?
It's a risk. It's a risk that could pay off. It's a risk that could set a franchise back that is looking and searching for their franchise quarterback. At the same time, though, listen, Bryce Young is a phenomenal college quarterback. This is no shot at Bryce Young, but
right.
Mitch. I heard people say Baker Mayfield was too small. What does that make Bryce Young? I mean, let's be honest here. I loved Baker at the time. I was a huge advocate in taking Baker Mayfield. If you said Baker Mayfield was too small, he was a bit taller, he weighed more, and now you have a quarterback coming in that was the likely number one pick all along, or first quarterback taken, and all of a sudden there's a lot of question. Mitch, can he take hits? Playing in the SEC is a different style of football, obviously, compared to most other conferences in college, but the NFL is a monster. Can a quarterback like Bryce Young take hits and survive the hits and last long enough? And it then brings you to the question, with Richardson being 244 pounds and 6'4", you don't have to worry about can he see over the line. You know he has about a 44-pound advantage over Bryce Young. Did Bryce Young? He's very good. Okay, I'm not trying to diminish Bryce
He was
Young.
he was a very good quarterback in college. Yeah.
Let's not act like he didn't play for the greatest college football coach and didn't have amazing talent around him either. Where Anthony Richardson necessarily didn't have the same type of talent around him on the football field basically anytime. It's just interesting, I think. I think CJ Stroud, Mitch, should be the top quarterback taken based off what he's done. If you're the Texans, I don't know why you wouldn't take him and then potentially take Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had a phenomenal combine at 12, and pair up the two that have great chemistry with each other on your team that is desperate for a quarterback and desperate for a star wide receiver. The Will Levis talk, Mitch, has vanished. I mean, before the combine, it was Will Levis. Could he be the top quarterback taken? I'm happy that has vanished because he shouldn't be the top quarterback taken. If he makes me eat my words, so be it. But you're talking about a guy that couldn't beat out Grandpa Clifford at Penn State and had to transfer to Kentucky. Let's just call it for what it is. I would hate to be the Houston Texans unless a team hops them to draft a quarterback, because then the pressure is off you. But if the Bears trade the number one pick and a team hops up and takes Will Anderson or takes an offensive lineman or takes a defensive player, the pressure on the Houston Texans on making sure they take the right quarterback is going to be insane. Because if you don't, not only does it hurt you and set your franchise back, you potentially have to look at those other quarterbacks, blossom into the next best quarterback in the league, and potentially play them every year, depending where they go. It's just, I would hate to be the Houston Texans. I really would. Now, if the Colts jump up to want to take a quarterback, I firmly believe all pressure is off, because then if you take Bryce Young, it's like, well, for good reason, he was the best available. So be it. The Houston Texans are in a really tough spot here. But
see, I think with the defense thing, that would probably be more so if the Bears retain that number one pick, because then they can focus in on either fixing their defense or trying to bolster the offensive line for Justin Fields. I did pull up something right here regarding Bryce Young. Kyler Murray, who was selected number one a few years ago, was measured at 5'10" and an eighth, like Young, and 207 pounds, so 3 pounds heavier. He was the shortest first-round QB since 1967, and there's only been 2 quarterbacks drafted in the first round who were under 6 feet. Him and then Johnny Manziel from a few years ago. Michael Vick and Drew Brees were both at 6 feet even, and they were both over 210. So Young is coming in at one of the smaller guys, and I don't necessarily think he has the flashiest of skill sets like Murray did coming out of college. And I wonder if, say, the Texans were to get that top pick, or they stay at number 2 and Chicago takes another guy at number 1, would you take Richardson because he's a big player who can at least handle some of the hits in the NFL seemingly? Because Houston's offensive line, not great. Indianapolis's line, not the greatest. A team like Baltimore's offensive line was pretty good from this past season. I believe it was they're one of the top teams in the league. But again, I'm fascinated into seeing where Richardson could end up. Could he go number 1? Could he go all the way to probably number 8, it seems, where the Colts are? Because if the Colts stand strong, I think that CJ Stroud would be a very good fit for them. I think CJ proved himself to be a very capable thrower, not just in the championship game, but from this combine recently. That man was just slinging perfect spirals all over the place. Granted, I know it's the whole thing. It's like, you're in a dome, you're in shorts. I get it. But he proved himself extremely capable as a college quarterback and seemingly has the tangibles to be successful in the NFL. And I'd be very interested in seeing that matchup of him. Again, I think Stroud's a very solid thrower, and he has more of a build than Young does. I'm not saying that Young can't play in the NFL, but it's very difficult for these guys. I mean, look at Kyler Murray this season, having to deal with the injuries that he was dealing with. And a lot of that, some of the stuff that happened in the offseason was on him. But at the same time, I'm interested in this. I'm curious as to where these quarterbacks will go. And then there's other guys in this mix that we haven't even talked about. Potentially, you mentioned Will Richardson is a top defensive guy. Jalen Carter, who we talked about last week, could still be a top 5 pick if some team takes the risk of his off the field stuff going on right now. I don't know, man. I'm looking at the listing right here if I can pull it up. It was the draft schedule here. You have Chicago at number 1. You have Houston at number 2. Arizona and Seattle both at 3 and 5 fascinate me because Seattle has the pick from Denver. Arizona has the 3rd pick because they ended up bottoming out after Kyler gets injured. Where do those two teams need to find improvements, and could they do so through this draft?
Well, what do the Cardinals do with DeAndre Hopkins? If they trade DeAndre Hopkins, you need to go get a number 1 wide receiver. And the question is, did Smith and Jigba prove enough to be the top wide receiver taken? Are they going to look somewhere else and take a wide receiver? Could that be a team that maybe trades down a little bit and then takes a wide receiver? I think that is a realistic possibility for them because we know Hopkins right now isn't happy. He's owed a lot of money. There's rumors that he wants to be out, and there's rumors they are agreeing they should trade him. Where he wants to go, I've seen reports that he'd prefer to go to Jacksonville, the Chargers. There's obviously all this hopeful Browns fans he'd somehow find his way to Cleveland, which I don't think is realistic. It's that's tough. You said Seahawks, the other one, correct?
Yeah, Seahawks. Yeah.
Right. For the Seahawks, defense, offensive line help. I don't know. I mean, you have Kenneth Walker, Geno Smith played very well, obviously surprising, I believe, everybody in the league. Those are also teams, Mitch, that could trade back down. I think what needs to be determined first is what are the Chicago Bears going to do with the number 1 pick?
Right.
I think once that happens, dominoes will fall. And if the Bears stay there and take Will Anderson, I think it's very possible that somebody like the Colts calls Arizona and trades up to number 3, or somebody tries to call Seattle and trade up into the top 5. We have a long ways to go. And I'm very excited for the NFL draft because it's pure chaos, and we can finally do that since we don't have a 1st-round pick and just kind of sit back, enjoy it, and look at all these other quarterback-starved teams and certain teams that need certain needs and see who kind of screws each other over in the draft. But there's going to be a lot to look forward to here, especially with Pro Day still having to happen. And don't forget, Pro Day is where Zach Wilson all of a sudden just shot up the draft board, and all of a sudden he was the 2nd best quarterback in the draft because he was throwing against nobody inside.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and I think that if Seattle goes for the offensive line help, you could be looking at somebody like Peter Skoronski for Northwestern or Paris Johnson from Ohio State. There was one in terms of receivers. Quentin Johnson is probably the highest rated receiver in this draft so far, although Jordan Addison from USC is creeping up there as well. Pittsburgh has 3 picks in the first round, or within the first 2 rounds, and Jordan Addison, before he was at USC was teammates with Kenny Pickett for the Pitt Panthers. That I think will probably happen here in the future because we've seen this trend of college quarterbacks getting their college teammate receivers. We've seen it with the Bengals in Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith. I mean, granted, those guys, that was more so the Bryce Young era rather than the Jalen Hurts, but still. I'm curious to see what they're going to do with that pick, and I'm curious where we're going to see here in a couple weeks. Of course, the Browns don't have a lot of picks from the top 40-ish or so we're going to have to wait till then. But I'm interested in seeing where this goes, and I'm interested in seeing where a lot of these guys will end up. And that's where we'll end the Big Time Sports Podcast Show episode here. Thank you so much for listening or watching. Obviously, be sure to follow us here on YouTube, subscribe and hit the bell. You can follow us on Twitter at Mitch Spinell, at Mitchell Balla, at BTS Ohio, and then at Big Time Sports Ohio on Facebook and Instagram. And you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. So those are all our podcast platforms. What is our fact of the day, Mitch?
Lincoln Logs were created by John Lloyd Wright, son of a famous architect in the 1920s, and they were named after Abraham Lincoln, who grew up in a log cabin.
Makes sense. John David Wright. Was his dad the guy who was from that fable about that's John Henry. That's John Henry. I was thinking about the guy who uses tools to build through the whatever. All right. Great way to end the episode, Mitch. Thanks so much for listening or watching the Big Time Sports Podcast Show.